I'm Pepper Raper.
And I'm Lindsay Mills.
And this is Almost Live, a weekly show designed to give you the who's who and what's what in Telluride and Mountain Village.
On this week's episode, we are going to focus on the inaugural Original Thinkers Festival, screening this weekend. We'll have interviews with David Holbrook and Gabriel Lifton-Zoline, along with one of the presenting guests, Leslie Chang.
In addition to Original Thinkers guests, we'll have an interview with Andrei Kozlovsky, who's performing at the Bob in the Palm Theater this weekend.
You'll also find some classic Almost Live fare, including new episodes of Device Advice with the Wilkinson Public Library and our music series Jamcast, looking back at a Telluride Palm jazz performance.
The wine geek food freak Patrick Legans is once again going to bring us a delicious recipe, and everyone's favorite local yogini, Barbara Glansing, will teach us how to do Surya Namaskar B, also known as Sun Salutation B.
For now, let's head over to the Wilkinson Public Library for a new episode of Device Advice with Hank and Gloria, showing us some new genealogy apps available at the library. And then we'll come back to an interview with David Holbrook.
Hi, my name is Gloria Chavita.
And I'm Hank.
And welcome to Device Advice, brought to you by Wilkinson Public Library. Today we're talking about Ancestry Library.
And family search.
Are you doing some genealogy research to create a family tree?
Do you know who your father is?
Are you doing this research? Then come by the library and check out Ancestry Library. You can access voter records, census records, military records. You can also receive tips and tricks from genealogist specialists. The database is only available in the library, but it is free to you.
Family Search is another free genealogy resource offered at the library, but you can actually use it on your home computer. It's run by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which I'm told is a good thing. You can access millions of genealogy records, photos, and even build your own family tree. But you have to create a free account.
Come check out these free resources at the library.
Even if you know who your father is.
Thank you for tuning in to Device Advice, brought to you by Wilkinson Public Library.
So now you have a brief overview of what's happening this weekend at Original Thinkers. And I'm sitting here with David Holbrook, the ringleader of the Original Thinkers Festival.
Pleasure to be back, Lindsay. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for coming back again. We appreciate it. So you're gearing up. It's finally here.
Man. It's on in such a big way, like the conference center, which we're renaming the Big Idea, just a little ways from here. There are a dozen people building this radical set for the theater. We have people running around town doing these things. I mean, it's on.
Yeah. So everybody's running on high gear right now.
It is. We've had one staffer, I won't mention who, has done her first overnight. I said, you got to sleep. but we're in that pinch. And that's one of the things I love about doing a festival. My first job out of college was working at the Olympics. And the Olympics were going to come whether you're ready or not. Mm-hmm. And I think I really got used to that idea of working towards an event. And of course, 10 years of mountain film, working with Peter Kenworthy, we knew that was coming. We always knew. And in that inexorable march, gets the blood flowing and the adrenaline going and gets you focused for sure.
Yeah. So tell us a bit, and now that we've gotten to this point, about the programming that's coming up this weekend.
I'm so excited about the program. It really is something I've never seen or done, in that we're just doing 10 programs. And each one of them has their own flavor, their own concept, but they're each built around an individual idea. And what we're doing is we're saying, okay, that idea is going to be amplified by a speaker, by a film, usually a short, and that in combination allows us to understand that idea in a whole different way. And I think films are celebrated in so many ways, to educate, to edify, to inspire, all these things. But I don't think we look at films as much as for their ideas. And what we're trying to do is saying there are ideas that run deep in these films, even when you don't really think so. And I'll give you an example. We're doing a show I love called The Metabolism of Resilience. And Ron Suskind is sort of the kernel of that. And Ron was the star of Life Animated, the film about his son who is autistic and loved Disney movies and processed his whole world around Disney. And so Ron's coming to talk about the resilience that his family had to go through dealing with a son who became non-communicative from age 3 to 7. And all the challenges of that. But he's also talking about the resilience we need as a country right now, given all the crazy things that are happening in this world. And so that's Ron Suskind, and he'll be fantastic. He's one of the most eloquent people I've ever met. And people really gravitate towards him. But then we're going to pair it with a film called Prince's Tale. And Prince's Tale is a beautiful short documentary about a guy named Prince Ampensah, a Canadian actor and dancer who was in a horrible fire in Toronto and was horribly scarred by it and lost both his arms. And the film is about him deciding to continue to dance. Wow, what an expression, what an example of resilience. So the two of those together is, probably a 75-minute program, but build around this one idea of the metabolism of resilience, and I think there's real power in that. And that's just one of 10. I could go on through all of them, but each one is built like that. And so I think and hope that the audience will come in, get this big burst of ideas of all these things, and then say, okay, I'm going to go decompress, I'm going to get food, get a drink, go play ping pong, go outside, who knows with our weather, and then come back in for something completely different, but still build around that concept of a single idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that we first talked about, I think back in March was scheduling everything around the ideas.
That's
and
right.
Not requiring people to get up and leave to go get in line for something else. And it seems you've been very successful with that, looking at the schedule.
Yeah, we're one theater, and it's called The Big Idea, which is the Telluride Conference Center, and that's going on. Everything else is dark. When the big idea is dark, we'll say, hey, do people go over to Wagner Ski Factory and take a tour of that? Pete's an original thinker. We'll say, go on the Via Frada, weather permitting. Chuck Kroger is certainly an original thinker. Just chill out. Read a book by one of our authors, David Quammen, Ron Suskind, Jedediah Jenkins, Lauren Greenfield. All these people have wonderful books. We just want people to be relaxed. And it sounds facile because it probably is, but I want this to be smart, fun, and chill. Super smart in the programming. All the people both on stage and in the audience, so smart. Fun because we're in Telluride and we're gathering all these terrific people together, and we should enjoy each other. That's important. And then the chill factor of saying, I don't have to hustle out of here. I can relax into this. My pass gets me into the show, and I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to get in. And I think that really, when you take that stuff away, it can create a richer experience what's happening in the theater and for the audience overall.
Absolutely. So you touched on a few of the guests that are coming.
Sure.
While you're excited for all of them, I know.
All of
Who do you think people should be really keeping an eye on this weekend?
Come on, I can't answer that, Lindsay.
Toughest question
Which
of
is
the
my
night.
favorite child? I don't know. Look, Lauren Greenfield is such a big art star right now. Her book, her movie Generation Wealth, which we're playing Friday night. We're also doing a free outdoor screening of her last film, Queen of Versailles, which is a terrific film. Lauren is really giving an insight into what's driving not only a lot of America, but the world. There's this idea of this culture of consumption, which is unnerving and disturbing in so many ways. And I think Lauren will really help people understand that. I'm personally excited, and we're playing a film here called We Are Not Done Yet. and it's a documentary that I actually helped produce, but had a very minor role. Really, the director and the producer, who's Jeffrey Wright, the actor who's coming in as well, they were part of it, and Jeffrey's been a friend for a while. But the people who I'm really excited to meet, who I've never met, are the veterans in the film, the stars. And the film is about these veterans who decide to put on a spoken word performance to help deal with the trauma of their combat. Such courageous men and women, so brave, so willing to share. And I haven't had a chance to meet them, so I'm really looking forward to having them here and seeing how they enjoy Telluride. And I know that knowing Telluride, knowing the people who'll be showing up, they're going to be warmly welcomed to this community. And what they've done is remarkable, both from the traumas, the challenges of war and combat, but how they've dealt with it. Their courage, their wisdom, their depth of character and personality blows me away. I'm on text chains with them, on email chains, and the way they're grappling with what they've had to deal with makes anything I've done look easy.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, truly. And so I can't wait to have them here.
So attendees are going to be walking away with a ton this weekend. What is one thing that you hope to do for all of the people that are going to be coming this weekend?
That's a great question, Lindsay. I think for me, it's something Peter and I always tried to get right at Mountain Film was, what's the action item? What's the impact? And that's a really hard thing to do. And what I want is for people to come out of this and say, okay, I've learned, I've listened, and I'm taking away something that will affect me in my everyday. And I wish I had a more tangible answer, but I feel the idea that we can just like things on Facebook or tweet them or share them on Insta, whatever it is, that's not enough. And I don't think it's enough to make change. I don't think it's enough for our soul. And what I hope that we can do is really people come away saying, I'm transformed. And that's a high goal, but I really feel we can do it. We will see. And what I hope really as we build this festival, we can find those action items that are real and tangible to give people that opportunity to say, now I'm doing this.
Right.
It's important to feel this, it's important to think this, but what are we doing? And that's the thing that's my biggest question mark about this. I feel the programming's strong as hell. I'm really psyched about all the people who are coming out to take it all in. But what are we going to do? And that's the big question. And that's exciting. Whether we can answer it in a way that's easy to explain, I don't know. But that's the goal.
Yep. Well, I hope you have the best weekend
Thanks.
yet, and I'm sure everything's going to turn out beautifully.
It feels good. I like where we're at this point. It's exciting, and I hope people turn out. And thanks for having me back on the show.
Thank you so much for coming, David.
Pleasure, Lindsay.
Appreciate it.
Right on.
Now let's take a look at a really cool performance from the Adam Bodine Trio at the Palm during the Jazz Series this past summer.
welcome back. That was a wonderful jam cast of the Adam Bodine Trio. Thank you, Palm Arts, for bringing the jazz series this summer to Telluride. I am here with Gabe Lifton-Zoline, and we're going to get into the Original Thinkers Festival, but before we go there, let me hear your Telluride story.
Well, it's a long story, I think. I was born and grew up here. I lived here off and on my whole life. My folks are still here. My sister's still here. So it was nice. It was a great place to grow up. And, you know, I live mostly in LA now, and I've lived all over, but I'm excited and have been looking for a way to try to spend more time here. And so when Original Thinkers came up, and David Holbrook and I have been friends for a long time, kind of chatting about that, being like, and I was like, how do I figure out how to spend, you know, half my year in Telluride? And this came up, and it's such an interesting way to do it, to both be here, to get to interact and build something for the community, but also to be bringing people in. I feel very lucky to do it.
So what is your role with Original Thinkers?
I believe my title's co-conspirator. So we have fun titles, and it's a little bit of everything. I kind of, you know, I'm helping David with the overall shaping and the programming, and just kind of trying to build out how do we do something that's really born from the community. And we talk about ourselves a lot as being community built, and I think that's really important to us, that both there's a real action component in terms of what comes out of this, that you're not just inspired and excited by it, but also that it moves you to change maybe what you do in your own life or to get involved in action. And my background is as a political organizer, so to me that idea of making sure people are engaged, whatever it is, whether it's through politics or through art or through film or through talks, that you get out in the world and do something. I think that we're going to really move people to do that.
And as far as pulling this together, can you share some triumphs and challenges of starting a festival from scratch with such...
Yeah, I mean, the triumphs hopefully we'll see after the weekend,
Right.
and see where we get to. I think one of the triumphs is always you try to create these things and you try to do it in a way that resonates with people. And I think for us, it's both the internal bit of that, of just how do we conduct ourselves in the office? You know, how do you make sure that you're incredibly friendly with everyone and treating people with respect, and that bubbles out. But then that bubbles out to your audience and your guests as well. And so I'm hoping that when people come to the festival and you know, take a deep breath, right? Like, we're in this beautiful place. And part of why Ideas Festivals from Davos to Aspen Institute and the Ideas Festival have started in the mountains is that it's a great place to come and relax and retreat, but why also get filled up with ideas and filled up with things. So I'm really hoping that kind of suffuses the whole festival, and people come, have an amazing weekend, and whether you're local or not, kind of get reoriented around some things that matter, and be exposed to some really big thinking that challenges the status quo. I mean, I think part of why Original Thinkers make so much sense in Telluride is that Telluride as a community has a kind of beautiful, more radical, more tough edge to it, infused with real original thinking from LL Nunn on. We're a community that kind of, you know, to the free box, right? Like, we grapple with these things, and I think we're just trying to sustain some of that energy, bring it back, but also highlight what happens here already.
So with the festival that's so community-based, how do you see it impacting Telluride?
I see it as, I think, you know, in this first year, I think it'll be so exciting to have folks come up. We have a lot of free programming happening. So we have the Brainstorm stage, which is our outdoor speaker series, where we have talks that are going to be happening there with amazing people. Ron Suskind, most of our guests will come through at some point. We have the Down Lows.
Always popular.
Which are always popular, and so those will be with a mix of locals and people workshopping their own stories to tell, but also some of our guests who will be coming and doing one. So, you know, that'll be really interesting. We have the Synapse Amphitheater at the top of Lift 1, and so we'll be doing Thursday, Friday, Saturday free programming there. So I think the impact will be people should come, check it out, see what we're about, you know, as well as what's happening in the main theater. But I think it's partly, you know, we live in tumultuous times, and I think, you know, deep thinking and substantive churning through of ideas it's harder and harder, from my purview, to find places to do that. And I think we're setting aside a brief little window in our own small way to say, hey, we can set aside all of this crazy stuff and this yelling and just like talk about ideas and see them from multiple angles. And I'm so excited for people to come into these shows and examine an idea in such a kind of 360 way, through films, through the speakers, through the performance. So I think it'll be a really interesting way for people to get at these certain ideas in different ways.
Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for coming in and telling us about it. And who do we have here?
This is Bruno. Bruno!
Sleeping on the job?
You're going to come up and say hi? No. He's not.
Well, there you have it.
Small dog down there.
Gabe, thanks for coming in and talking to us here in the studio.
Thanks for
We
having
are
me.
looking forward to the weekend. Original Thinkers, check it out.
Hey, I'm Patrick Legans, the Wine Geek Food Freak. I just got some yellow onion sauteing in some butter right now. I'm gonna make a beautiful pork salted boca. I got some nice pork here at my local Clark's Market. I'll put in a little flour, so my onions are starting to become translucent. Not quite there, but we're still gonna cook them for a minute here with these pieces of pork. So I'm gonna put these guys right here on the bottom. I kind of push away the onions a little bit just because I want them to be completely on the bottom of the pan. I'll sear those on both sides, trying to lock in the juices of the pork so it remains like this really, a lot of times pork can dry out. This will not happen on this, I promise. All right, so the first side is seared already. Now, I'm not going for like a big color variation change. I like them just nice and cooked, barely seared. The juices will stay inside. Now we'll do the other side. Notice these onions were timed correctly. I softened them up early, but now they're really coming into their own at the same time that the pieces of pork will be seared properly. Then we're gonna add a little chicken stock that I made, classic mirepoix chicken stock. All right, so I've now been cooking the pork about 7 minutes. Checking my salt content. I'm gonna put a little bit in now. I'm gonna check it again at the end, but sometimes it'll fall off if you don't add it consistently. So as that's going, I'm now gonna take the opportunity to slice up a little sage. So put that in there. I'm gonna take some beautiful prosciutto. Put this guy right on top there. Now, traditionally, that's where you would end it. But I learned a little trick from a friend of mine, Antonio Rache. It's a little mozzarella, pretty thinly sliced. We put a little bit over each piece. Then I'm gonna take another pan, I'm gonna turn it over, and I'm gonna melt that cheese. All right, now let's check those guys. See, the mozzarella is nice and melted. We know the pork's cooked. I'm gonna take these guys like this. I'm gonna transfer them to my plate. Stack them over each other just a little bit. Now, I'm gonna add my pasta, and I'm just gonna reduce. All right, now look at that sauce. That is perfect. Look at the consistency. It doesn't break at all. So, I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna put my pasta right in front, and then I'm just gonna pour a little bit of this sauce right over the top of it. A little bit over the pasta because you'd like to soak that up, I promise you that. All right, and then take our 2 decorative pieces, boom, and boom. Pork a la saltimbocca. Until next time, remember all you need is good ingredients, some care, and a minute of your time, and you can eat like me, Patrick Legans, the Wine Geek Food Freak.
Hello and welcome back. Thank you, Patrick, once again for bringing us a version of your delicious cooking. I'm here right now with Leslie Chang. Leslie, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Leslie's one of the featured guest speakers at this weekend's Original Thinkers Festival. And so before we talk about that, I just want to hear what your Telluride story is. This is a way we typically kind of bring people on and let the audience know who they're seeing and who they're listening to by way of their Telluride story.
Yeah, I actually have a Ridgeway story.
Okay, that's good. I'm a Ridgeway.
Yeah, okay. So I was living in China with my husband, and we moved back to the States in 2007. And it took about 6 weeks to ship our stuff from China to Long Beach in outside LA. And in that time, we drove around Colorado and New Mexico looking for a place to live. And they said, okay, by the time your goods arrive at the dock, you have to give us an address. So we were driving around looking at places. And the minute we got to Ridgeway in this area, the San Juans, and it was just, as you know, breathtaking and remote, and nobody knew about this place, but it was amazing. But it was also close enough to Montrose Airport that we could go in and out when we had to do book tours and interviews and things like that.
So you were there, you made that your permanent home at that time, but you were traveling a lot.
Yeah, so we made that our permanent home, had a couple kids, and then in 2011, we moved to Egypt. So we had spent 10 years in China as reporters, and then we spent about 5 years in Egypt. But every summer we would come back to southwestern Colorado, and this is our home.
Good. Well, and now we're neighbors.
Yes.
You and I.
Yes, a couple miles away.
So tell us a little bit about what you do professionally, your career. You've already said you're a reporter, a journalist. But tell us what you've been doing over the years, and then we'll lead up to what your current focus has been over the past several years.
So I initially worked in China as a reporter for the Wall Street Journal for about 10 years. And while I was there, I started working on a book about factory workers in China. So I eventually decided to leave the paper and just become a full-time writer. And over the years, my focus has become kind of writing about women in the developing world and how they work and how they live and how their lives change or don't change.
So your book, Factory Girls, talks about these Chinese migrant workers, females, that are moving from the country to the city to take factory jobs. And it's what for me was so sort of profound about this was it really changed my way of thinking about these people. You know, because I think of them as sort of anonymous, you know, sort of these automatons. But these are real people, obviously, with real stories, and they don't have the stories that I thought they might have. Can you talk a little bit about what you found out in China?
Yeah, that was my starting point as well. I felt like a lot of people had written about factory workers and was always treating them as automatons, as you say, kind of robotic workers, or like almost slaves, like they're being forced to do this work, they're getting injured, sometimes they're being killed. And I was thinking that if you look at the average worker's life, it might be very different from what we see from the outside. It might not be so full of pathos and suffering, but it might also have an aspect of opportunity or change. So I went down to a huge factory city called Dongguan in southern China near Hong Kong. And I just spent time getting to know young women workers on the streets, and eventually I became close with two of them, and I followed their lives over a couple years. And I found that going out from the village to the city brought incredible change to their lives, not only economic, but also emotional and personal. It changed the way they saw the world, who they wanted to marry, how they wanted to raise their children, how they wanted to talk to their parents. Everything about them changed.
So all these kinds of growth and development opportunities that we don't necessarily credit. When we think about it, we think about these migrant workers in China slaving away so that we can wear our footwear, our jackets, our bags that we carry on our shoulders, that kind of thing. We've got this sort of guilt-driven sort of perception, which you sort of exploded.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like people are very well-meaning, and they're thinking, well, these workers are so much poorer than me, I must be exploiting them, and isn't it terrible? And there were certain places where they would have boycotts against Chinese-made products. And when you look at the workers, their context is not our life. Their context is their own life, and where they're coming from, and what life their parents have had, and how different their life can be after they move to the city, work in the factory, learn some skills, make some money. They can really change. They can become city people. They can change what they want from the world, from life.
Which makes eminently good sense. It's just we weren't looking at it through that lens.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense that you look at it from your own lens. I think it's a particularly American quality to look at things from our own perspective. And I just wanted to kind of turn that upside down and look at the world from their perspective.
And were you born in China? Or
I was born in the U.S., but my parents came from China.
And so you grew up speaking Chinese.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, let's talk about Egypt, because after China, you went and did a similar thing in Egypt. Right?
Yeah, so my husband is a writer as well, and after China, we came back to the States for a couple years, and we always wanted to move back overseas to a place that was completely new and different, learn a different language, and we kind of focused on the Middle East as another part of the world, like China, that is hugely important, but I think vastly misunderstood. And the lens through which we generally see the Middle East is political. And I was curious about the economic and the social aspects of ordinary life there.
And what did you find out?
Yeah, so I ended up, this was not my plan to become the factory reporter, but I ended up looking at women who were working in different garment factories around Egypt, mostly in rural areas, and again, got to know a few women. And what I found was vastly different, because in China, you could see that with the economy booming, young women could get jobs, make a lot of money by their standards, and change their lives, and change how their parents saw them. you know. But in Egypt, it's a very different story. The economy is not growing quickly, and the whole traditional structure of values and expectations, especially for young women, is still very much intact. Even though Egypt is part of the globalization trend, even though lots of tourists go to Egypt and they're usually blown away by how kind the people are and how beautiful the sites are, it's still a very, very traditional place. So what I found was that these young women could be just as capable and talented and charismatic as the ones I met in China, often more so. They could work and make money, and still their lives could not change at all. Like their husbands could still treat them in a very condescending way, patronizing way, not value their income, not value what they learned in the factory. And that kind of blew me away, because after China, my lens was that if you allow women to work, they can change their lives. And in Egypt, it's if you allow women to work, that in itself might not change anything, you know, and it shows how deeply those traditions can hold, even in the modern world.
Great. So you'll be presenting this weekend at the Original Thinkers Festival, the inaugural festival. Are you excited? Are you looking forward to it?
Yeah,
I wanted just to look at my notes. So that I think the title of the program is "This Is Her Country," and then it goes on to say how to smash the global patriarchy, one story and one voice at a time, which is a cool title for a program. So that's what you're going to be participating in.
Yeah, I'm going to be sharing the stories of a few young women in China and in Egypt, and the ways in which they smash the patriarchy through their lives, and in the ways in which they don't. And we have to look at both sides to acknowledge that this is not an easy battle that they're fighting.
Good. Well, we wish you the best of luck with this weekend's show. We thank you very much for coming in, Leslie. It's been really nice to have you on the set. What you're talking about is really, really interesting, and people are going to be in for a treat if they go and catch you on Saturday, is it? At the
Sunday.
Sunday at the Conference Center, or the Big Idea, I think they call it. And now let's join Pepper and Lindsay to hear about all the free events that are going on over the course of the weekend.
Thanks, Peter. We're here to talk about all the free things that are happening this weekend. I'm Lindsay Mills.
And I'm Pepper Raper.
And first, to touch on Original Thinkers, as sticking with the theme of most of today's episode, we have a ton of things going on with Original Thinkers this weekend, whether you have a pass or not.
And speaking of original thinkers, 4 years ago, San Miguel County actually made a formal apology to the Utes for their forced removal of this region. So we, as a county now, celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day on November 8th.
Instead of Columbus Day.
Yeah.
So to get you guys started, because there's so much going on this weekend, Thursday at 7:45 p.m. and over the course of the weekend at 7:45 p.m., you can find a free film with Original Thinkers at the Synapse Theater, which is going to be right at the top of the Chandala. On Thursday, it's The Truth About Killer Robots, which is a film about losing humanity to AI, robots, and automation overall.
Not scary at all.
Not scary at all.
Well, speaking about some less scary things, 5 p.m. on Friday, Roland McCook, who is an Uncompahgre Ute elder, will be doing a welcome and speaking on current Native American issues in the San Miguel County Meeting Room, which is in the Miramonte building. So that's going to be the first thing we've got going on with Indigenous Peoples Day weekend celebration.
Fantastic. Friday, you can also find talks at the Brainstorm stage, which is going to be in the Mountain Village Core at 10:30, 1:30, and 5:30. The 5:30 talk is actually a down low, which is a local talk that is dear to our hearts.
Storytelling. Who doesn't love the down low?
Great storytelling. And the theme for the Original Thinkers Festival downloads is My Worst Idea, which is going to prove to be very entertaining, I presume.
Should we move on to Saturday?
Saturday, let's do it.
All right, so Regina Lopez White Skunk, who is a Ute Mountain Ute and a leader and former co-chair of the Bear Ears Coalition, will be hosting 2 roundtables, one at noon at the Placerville Schoolhouse, and then one up here in Telluride at the Telluride Historical Museum at 3. Following her will be Glade Haddon, who is a retired BLM archaeologist, and he's doing a really cool presentation on 130 centuries of living well on the western slope. So Glade Haddon actually discovered the Eagle Rock Shelter in the Gunnison River Gorge National Recreation Area.
Wow.
I may have that wrong, but and it is the longest inhabitation of people in North America. It predates Christianity and it predates the pyramids in Egypt.
Wow.
Yeah, so 6 p.m. at the museum.
Also on Saturday, you'll find talks again in the Mountain Village Core at noon and 3:15 p.m. And then the film at the top of the Chandala is The Queen of Versailles, which is going to be a really, really interesting story film by Lauren Greenfield. And it's about David Siegel and his wife, Jackie, who were attempting to build one of the largest houses in the U.S. while their finances and the economy were crumbling around them. So a very, very fascinating film, and that's happening at 7:45 p.m. And then at 9 p.m. you can catch some free music at the Liberty, of course. It's going to be Little Giant, and they're throwing a Libra celebration. So that should be a pretty good one from 9 to midnight.
Cool. Well, Sunday there are going to be a couple more events for Indigenous Peoples Day. There will be one at the Wilkinson Public Library at 3 called Healing Our Histories. And following that at 6:30, there will be a poetry performance at Telluride Arts.
Fantastic. And then the final talks of the Original Thinkers Festival at the Mountain Village Core are going to be at noon, 2:45, and 5:30 p.m. 5:30 p.m. is the final down low, my worst idea, again being the theme.
So it's going to be like a reprise of the down low?
So different speakers. They kind of do that on occasion where it's going to be one day you have four
Same
speakers,
theme,
same theme, different speakers. So 2 series for the down low this time. I think they are going to have 8 different speakers. So it'll be a totally different story each time.
And those fill up fast, so it's kind of nice. You've got 2 chances to catch it down low.
Absolutely.
Cool. Well, Monday, which is the official Indigenous Peoples Day, there will be 2 more presentations starting at 5:30 at the Wilkinson Public Library, and the kids in the schools will also have 2 presentations in the morning as well.
That's fantastic.
So tons of stuff happening this weekend.
With a pass or not. But thank you so much for tuning in. Now off to our favorite yogi Barbara for Sun Salutation B.
Hello and welcome to this mini yoga series in beautiful Telluride, Colorado. My name is Barbara Glansnick, and today we'll be looking at Surya Namaskara B, or Sun Salutation B. This mini series is designed to provide you with some easy stretches that you can do throughout the day, especially when you don't have a lot of time. As always, I want you to focus on the breath, so we're only going to inhale and exhale through the nose. Also, I want you to honor and listen to your body. Just really see where you are today. All right, let's get cracking. So come to the front of the mat and to Samastitihi. Big toes touch, heels are slightly apart. Stand tall with strong legs, lifting through the crown of the head while grounding through your soles of the feet. Do a tiny little shoulder roll, take a breath or 2. And then on your next inhale, bend your knees and reach your arms up simultaneously. Exhale, fold forward, place your hands on either side of your feet, tuck your head. Inhale, come to lengthen, look up. Exhale, do 1 big jump into high plank, bend the elbows, hover. Inhale, roll over your toes into upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog. At the end of the exhale, you're going to turn the left heel towards the midline, step the right foot forward. Inhale, reach your arms up, palms touch. Exhale, back to Chaturanga. Inhale, upward facing dog, strong legs. Exhale, downward facing dog. Turn the right heel, step the left foot forward. Inhale, up into warrior. Exhale, back to Chaturanga. Bend the elbows. Inhale, roll over your toes, up dog. Exhale, raise your seat, down dog. We're going to stay here for 5 breaths. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. At the end of the exhale, bend the knees, look forward with an inhale. Jump towards your hands, straighten the spine, look up, exhale, bow. Then bend your knees, sit down deeply, reach your arms up. Inhale, exhale, back to 0 position, Samastitihi. You can repeat Surya Namaskara B 5 times, and it's best practice after Surya Namaskara A. Thank you so very much for practicing and tuning in. Namaste.
All right, welcome back. I am here with Andrei Koslovsky, who has a dance performance this week, which we'll get into in just a second. But first, tell me a little bit about yourself and your Telluride story.
My Telluride story, I came here 7 years ago for the winters. And for the last 7 years, I spent the winters here, worked as a ski instructor. And then in the summers, like spring, summer, fall, I always went back to the East Coast.
Okay.
To my other life. And this was the first season where I spent kind of most of the year here.
Oh, wonderful. And how did you discover Telluride?
I was on a road trip skiing and wasn't in the mood to go home. And drove down here from Salt Lake City. And was just here for 2 days, and then I came back a couple years later for a vacation, and a few years later after that.
Wonderful. Well, tell me a little bit about your dance background.
Well, I started as a young kid in theater, and I was an actor first. I went to the University for the Arts in the acting program in Bern, Switzerland. And while I was studying there, I discovered that I actually was more drawn to dance or a combination of both. So I went on from there and went to London Contemporary Dance School and studied there for 3 years. And then I came to America and danced for a touring company that was based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania for 11 years. And after that, I took over my own company.
Oh, great. So are you still running a company on the East Coast?
Yes.
How many dancers are in it?
It always depends on the project. Last year, we did a piece with 8 people. Sometimes we do pieces that have less people in it. I also like doing solo work.
Yeah. Well, tell me about your upcoming performance.
The upcoming performance is at the Palm, and it's in the Black Box.
Yes.
And it's kind of a moving performance because we are starting in the lobby.
Oh, cool.
With a piece by Claire Porter. She's a New York City-based choreographer, and she directed and wrote that piece for me in 2012, I believe.
Okay.
And it's very language-driven, that work. Then Claire Bird, who is also a local talent, she's a flutist. And we both discovered that we both studied in London.
Oh, how wonderful.
She's going to play live music for a little bit, like in between the 2 dance works. And then we're showing Mimoun in the Black Box. Mimoun is the title of the piece.
Okay.
Which we did in 2005 with Doug Levine, who is a composer. He composed the original music. And Susana Amundarain, who's a Venezuelan-born scenic designer and painter who created the set.
Wow, so there's a lot of different influences in this.
Yes. And it was originally, in its first version, it was a true solo piece. And now we kind of reworked it, expanded it, and Erica Curry Elrod is one of the additional cast members, and Dean A. Maggio, who I've never worked with before, is also in the cast, and he's also a local.
Yeah, that's right. He was in Tab, and he's part of the dance collective.
Correct. That's right.
Oh, that's great. So what was the inspiration for this? How did you decide to put on a performance at the Palm?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's my first time performing here.
Oh.
And I feel that kind of the work that we do, I mean, first of all, because of my influence in German dance theater, and with the collaborators I've been working with, Susanna and Leonie Stein, who is kind of my artistic collaborator, that the work that we do is work that you don't get to see much in this country. And I think I just thought it would be really exciting to show that in a place like Telluride.
That's wonderful. So what time is it? It's on Thursday and Friday?
It's on Thursday and Friday. It starts at 6:30.
Okay.
And it will be over shortly before 8.
All right. And it's donation based?
It's not donation based. We have like a 3-tier ticket program, so you can choose what you want to pay. It's open seating.
That's wonderful.
Depending on what you can afford and what you would like to give. The tickets are, I believe, $10, $25, and $40.
All right.
And the proceeds of the ticket sales go to Palm Arts Inc. To support their arts programming.
Oh, well, that's wonderful.
Welcome back from that wonderful dance piece titled Erica. We enjoyed producing that several years back and love being involved in the community, whether it's with local schools, community events, businesses, organizations, and the governments. We enjoy being involved in the community in any way possible.
Speaking of community, Telluride TV is a public access channel, and we'd like to give a shout out to some of our most generous supporters, the towns of Telluride and Mountain Village, the Telluride Ski and Golf Company, and the Telluride Foundation. Well, Almost Live is almost over.
But if you missed any part of this episode, feel free to look us up on local cable channel 12, morning, noon, or night, or find us on YouTube or Facebook anytime at Telluride TV.